over to him.
Thank you, Whitney. Just wanted to say thank you to everybody for taking the time to join us today, and that we are very excited to start this new training series as a part of our Scaling Up project that I've been working on. We're in year 2 of this project now, and it is a project in which we are providing assistance to tribal producers and tribal governments looking to upscale their food and agribusiness efforts. And so this is one of the trainings associated with that, as it kind of goes into the individual decision-making tools that a lot of producers will need to know in making decisions that impact their business. So with that, I think I'm going to get started with how we're going here. So just first, I wanted to kind of go through an agenda here with what we have and kind of the things I would like to cover. I'm first going to give a little bit of an introduction of some of the work that we do and go through and give kind of a background for the budget tool before I go into a demo. So just to kind of give an agenda on where we're heading. My name is Blake Jackson. I am the policy officer and a staff attorney here at the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative. I'm an enrolled citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. I have a background in agricultural policy and federal Indian law. Going back, I have an agribusiness degree from Oklahoma State University, and I have worked a few stints in USDA and spent some time on the Hill in the House Agriculture Committee. Then went to law school, University of Oklahoma College of Law, where I got my Indian law certificate, and then went and served most recently in-house at my tribe at the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma before coming over here to Arkansas. And so I'm really excited to be here and kind of be involved in these issues and continue the work that the organization was already doing before I got here. So kind of a little bit of a background on our organization. We were first established in 2013 when our current Vice Chancellor of Economic Development, Stacy Leeds, who is a citizen of the Chickasaw, or excuse me, the Cherokee Nation, was the dean of the law school here. And Janie Sims Hip, who is a citizen of the Chickasaw Nation, came on when we were at the law school and started this organization and kind of the trajectory of the work we're doing today. And since we have moved with Vice Chancellor Leeds into the Office of Economic Development, which is great for our work because it kind of encompasses a lot of the work we're doing in Indian country and aligns with the mission of what we do. And Janie has since moved on, but we have a new director, Colby Duran, who was our former policy director with the initiative and has continued with the position and some of the great work we were doing. And as you can see, our overall mission is enhancing the health and wellness of tribal communities by advancing healthy food systems, diversified economic development, and cultural food traditions within Indian country. And these are some of the cornerstones of what we are trying to encompass going forward in our work, because we really feel that these are areas that, you know, if you go back to the historical roots of our tribal practices, a lot of them are more agricultural based, and, you know, keeping these ideals going forward and making sure that we are addressing them in a both effective and culturally appropriate way to diversify and develop our tribal food systems in this era. And we kind of go about this by providing complex strategic planning and technical assistance, creating new academic and professional executive education programs in food systems and agriculture. We develop solutions and opportunities through research and partnership with tribes and tribal organizations, and increasing student enrollment in land-grant universities in food and agricultural-related disciplines. So that's kind of a little overview of our mission and kind of the way we go about the work we do. And so our targets are really, you know, the tribal producer and the tribal governments and organizations. And we kind of do this by assisting with tribal food systems and cultural traditions. We do it through the lens of federal Indian law and policy in both food and agriculture law and policy. So the work of our office is kind of at where the plate tectonics of those two fields kind of come together in terms of federal Indian law and food and agricultural law. And we also do business and economic development planning assistance, and that's kind of the hat that I feel like I'm kind of wearing today in this, is because it's more business-based. But it's important to note. And we kind of do this through, you know, the capacity and knowledge. We have a very diverse staff here that has, different kinds of experiences they bring to the table and the knowledge they have. Some of the knowledge we have kind of transcends over into the relationships and networks we have, where we partner with other organizations to make the work more streamlined and effective, I think, in learning where we can partner with others. Training and education expertise, we provide that in a variety of areas, and that kind of goes into the outreach that we do as well. So some of the work that we've been doing specifically, you'll see here detailed, is we, with the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, the Food Safety Modernization Act, we provide some food safety training and outreach. We are the Native American Tribal Center for Food Safety Outreach, Education, Training, and Technical Assistance. Specifically, we provide training for the FSMA Produce Safety Rule, which is now in effect, and inspections are kind of coming at a staggered rate. And so we have a cooperative agreement to go out and do training in the field with producers to kind of to know what their compliance requirements are and what phase they fall into that. And part of what we've been tasked with doing there is develop more culturally appropriate training than just the regular training. We have an alternative curriculum development working group to develop that, and that's something that we kind of are going to start rolling out with our trainings. And you can find out more about those programs at www.nativefoodsafety.org. In December, we released a long project that we had been working on, the Model Tribal Food and Agriculture Code, which has a very, very kind of very long list of different areas that a tribe might want to incorporate into their legal structure if they're looking to develop their food systems. And it's a good starting point because it does have some model language and some context for these issues. And we can provide technical assistance with working with tribal attorneys that are in-house or serving those tribal nations to kind of figure out the best way to implement this going forward and provide that on-the-ground assistance. And you can get a copy of the food code for free by just making an account at www.tribalfoodcode.com. We've done some food policy roundtable discussions as kind of a part of building that food code, and that was something that our research director, Aaron Parker, was big in getting going, and has been continued to be a big part in us rolling out these trainings. Another thing that we do is supporting the National Association of the Food Distribution Programs on Indian Reservations, and that is a trade association for the program administrators for tribes and intertribal organizations. You might know FDIPR as the commodities program, and so historically that's what a lot of people have called it, but we are supporting the work of this organization and providing them kind of some research and policy analysis as they go forward. We conduct every summer an annual Native Youth in Food and Agricultural Leadership Summit here in Fayetteville. We are currently in year 6, and that provides a great opportunity for Native youth that are interested in going into this field of agriculture and food law, or any kind of food system, really, in any kind of agricultural discipline, really, if you want to translate it. To kind of come together and network and see kind of what opportunities there are for them going forward in their education and professional development. And the application for that should be coming out within the next week, so be looking for that. We have a scaling up project, which has been a big level of my involvement here since getting hired on last September. And as you can see, we have a series of trainings rolling out with that. Specifically, this is one of those, so be looking for more forthcoming information on that. And another thing that we are big in is the Native Farm Bill Coalition. We are a research partner in this organization that a big group of tribes have come together to kind of collectively speak as to what their goals with the last Farm Bill were. And as you may know, we had a Farm Bill come out December of 2018 and had a record number of tribal provisions in it, in the number of 63. And across that, we have a lot of different implementation segments that'll be coming forward, and working with the Native Farm Bill Coalition as to how that should be rolled out. So I do think there will be some tribal consultation opportunities. So also please be looking for those opportunities as well on our website going forward. To kind of get a little bit more to the task at hand, this is a first part of our scaling up training webinar series. Discussing agricultural production tools and economic forecast models to help build strong tribal food businesses and food systems throughout Indian country. And this is, like I said, a regularly scheduled, recurring webinar and in-person project dedicated to providing a comprehensive set of business planning and feasibility analysis training modules for tribal governments and tribal food businesses. And we cannot thank enough the generous support that we get to do this great work that was provided by the WK Kellogg Foundation. So we're very thankful for their support in sponsoring this series and the work they continue to support for us going forward. And just a little bit of a background on the strawberry production budget simulation that I'm going to walk through with you guys. I wanted to kind of give some background before we just dove into the weeds on this. It is a production model developed by the Cooperative Extension Service here at the University of Arkansas. It's specifically the Division of Agriculture Center for Agricultural and Rural Sustainability. And that original project was funded by the Walmart Foundation that they did. And it's designed to provide kind of a framework for any current producers or potential producers. And it gives you kind of a base scenario from which you can build and analyze with respect to different market prices or changes in production as to what that might mean for your production scenario going forward. So it kind of gives a scenario that could happen based upon market factors and variable costs that you might be running into. And you can kind of play with these tools to see how that might impact your operation. And so the numbers that you'll see, there's a default number that populates when we go through this tool. These activities and the prices were based upon here in the Fayetteville area by the University of Arkansas. And so that kind of feeds into the disclaimer that the practices were based upon, production procedures considered standard for the area that we're in and for which the interactive strawberry budget was developed, but they don't apply to every strawberry crop. So the numbers, the costs, the practices, and the materials will not be applicable to all situations or every production year. So what that necessarily means is you're going to see a lot here that's kind of tailored to from the area from which it was developed, but it's meant to be kind of a launching pad for what you can do in your specific area going forward. So it's, you're encouraged to kind of get with your local cooperative extension service or your local tribal extension agent to make sure that the numbers that you're using are based upon your area. That way your decisions are based upon accurate data going forward. And now if you look here in the webinar PowerPoint, you'll see that there's a budget download link for you to run through this tool yourself. And also the user guide, if you run into any issues, is on there as well linked. And those are actually available. The user guide is available as a handout as part of this series. So if you want to look at that going forward, it's available for you to download at your own time. Also, I would say that you will need a computer that has Excel to run this. So that is a technological capability that you might want to keep in mind going forward. So with that, I am going to go ahead and get started. So the first step you'll need to do is you'll pull up Excel and it'll have a prompt for you to enable macros on your computer. And for this tool to work the way it's designed to work by the agricultural economist that made it, you're going to have to enable your macros. So the first thing you'll see, and there's a little kind of continue screen there, you will need to click continue, and it just kind of comes up with the general screen for the introduction, and it kind of provides an overview that we've kind of already gone into with the context of how this was developed, the methodology of going forward, who supported it, and who were the developers, and it kind of provides a good overview there. But for our purposes, we'll just go ahead and start. So you'll notice here that a lot of the same functions are available. Kind of about this, the credits and the disclaimer I've already given you, and there's a link you can contact there for technical assistance if you run into any issues with this budget. It'll put you in touch directly with people that have developed it, and it kind of gives a user guide and a quick start guide, which I'm not going to go into here because that all that information is available in the handout. But I will say that the purpose of this tool is twofold, and it's to assist producers in the evaluation of costs, revenues, and risks associated with their strawberry operations, and to assess the changes to cost, revenue, and risk as expected costs, revenue, prices, or the yields change. So that's kind of good to know going forward as we dive into these issues. And it allows the strawberry producer to estimate operating costs, the fixed costs, total costs, and expected total returns by modifying the production practices or production systems, costs, or return values. So that's just a little bit of an overview as to what you'll see going forward here. So I'm going to go ahead and start going with the numbers. Now, it's a little hard to see here, and it shows up a little bit differently on a Windows computer. I'm running a Mac. Over here, you'll see a diagram with someone with, a handful of strawberries. This is for a field production model. And over here, you'll see, strawberries under a high tunnel. So there's two different options that you can pick, the field production or the high tunnel production. And I'm going to start out doing the field production because that's the one I've played with the most. And so when you click it, you'll see that there are a variety of different tools that you can use, and it auto-populates with market data that were developed, for one in this region, and two at the time that this tool was released about 4 years ago, I think. So it allows you to kind of pick the production system, which we're in field, that auto-populated. The cultivar, which I'm just going to go with generic for now, and it kind of allows you to enter like how far you want the beds to be spaced here with the density. And I'm just going to show you that you can play with these numbers as you go. If you want to make the plants say 14 inches apart, you wanted the beds to be spaced 65 inches apart. There's a lot of different plug and play models you can go with here, but I'm just going to leave that as is for now. It kind of goes into the expected yield in pounds per plant of strawberries that you can get from here, and then it breaks that further down into how is the production that you have going to be utilized. It kind of estimates that 70% are going to go to the fresh market and 10% are going to go into the processed market. I'm just going to make this 30% if it'll do it for me. But it kind of goes into the different way you can divide these up, and it also, you can see the expected market prices with respect to those different divisions of how you can use these use your yield. And then also it talks about the wages per hour if you want to pay your management a certain wage and your labor a certain wage going forward. Now, if you do the field production piece, you'll see that there is an amortization place. That information is there as a placeholder, but the amortization piece really comes up in the high tunnel production option. So with that, I'll go ahead and lead and just run the numbers so you can see how this thing really works in practice. And so the thing you might notice is, and it runs differently, if it does this, sometimes a pop-up comes up behind the field production input. So you might have to just click, move the window over and see that it kind of tells you that the information's good and it will take a minute. So when you click OK on that, you'll see that this summary tool comes up, and I'm just going to zoom in to make it a little bit easier to read for you folks on the other. So with this, it provides you, based upon the numbers we've entered, a good overview of what the different resulting balances are. You can see here that the gross revenues in a dollar figure per the area, which here the production area is 1 acre, are provided also with respect to the same, the total cost and the net returns that you're going to get. Kind of going into breaking those numbers down further, you can see that the gross revenues for the different production uses are reflected here as well. And then you can also get into the different costs for each item listed here, from harvest all the way to soil preparation and cleanup. And then that's also further broken down into a percentage pie graph based upon the the part amounts respective to the whole $25,399 cost reflected. And then it talks about the net returns that you're going to get and the money you put out per area, and that's kind of a useful figure. And down here is just a visual representation of the figures that are listed above of the totals. And it kind of goes into the expected values that you'll get. And then you can also conduct a break-even analysis that has some variable figures you can adjust. And I'll go into some of that here further in a second. But I would like to start out by pointing out here at the top, if you see the cursor, there are various different production activities, and you can click on them. And when you do, let's zoom in a little bit here. It provides the different things that might be activities that might be associated with such production activity. So it auto-populates all of these numbers from equipment operation, purchases, labor, fumigation, lime, so forth. You'll see all these listed. It auto-populates with respective quantity for each. Like, so for equipment operation, it's already at 1 acre and it gives you a price. But say if you wanted to alter one of these, you would just click here where it says your quantity and say if you wanted to put 115 in instead of 120, it'll go ahead and adjust these numbers over here. And now what it will do is if you change one of these numbers in the total cost column, it will reflect that in red so you can see the work that you've done. And if you want to change that back, you can just go back and delete it, and it changes it back to the number that it was before. And so you can see that these are different activities that may or may not pertain to your particular operation, as we said earlier, but you can also insert your own and associate the costs with that. I'm just going to put one. I'm just, for the sake of entering numbers, so you can see how this kind of works out. And it kind of goes across with the numbers correspond in this column to what data you enter in the respective row with that. So with that, I will kind of go into further detail with the other activities. The same is also to be said with irrigation. You can see the different, oh, I'm sorry, that clicked a little too many times there. You can see the different pieces of the irrigation activity, and like I said, it kind of goes the same with the different activities you can enter, and you could enter a test down here as well, or any other activity that might not be here that might be particular to your operation. And so you can kind of go forward. We're not in the high tunnels thing now, so there won't be anything because we're in the field production model. But in the field production model, it kind of goes forward, and you can reflect your labor costs for doing implementing the plant plugs, and you can look at the cost of the plant plugs, how many you're going to need, how many they cost for each one. It gives you your total cost. And the same goes with respect to all the pest management. Now, the good thing about this one that's kind of interesting is, say you see one here that is not reflected as applied. What you can do is go in and say, yes, I use that one. And when you do, it'll pop up with the number over here with respect to the quantity and price that you use. You can alter that as we discussed with the other before. But you go on and you see the total cost reflected with each of these categories going forward. You can get into your production activities, all the way from honeybee pollination to getting your organic certification. And we didn't go into the organic piece here, but that option is available for you. And it goes all the way over into your harvest activities that you can do. So, I mean, there's a lot of great info here. And the larger piece of that, which is the summary, is based upon the individual pieces that we went into here. So if you go back, you can see that some of this information might have changed from earlier based upon the different activities that you plug in with respect to these menu items above here at the top. That this little lower right-hand corner might change, and so might the cost displayed here. But let's go into, I want to show you all the break-even analysis with all of this. These options are a little hard to see because they're in white. That's just the way that was set up, but it might show up differently in Microsoft. You can choose between a yield and a price break-even analysis. And so going with this, it kind of goes with the average fresh market price, and it has these kind of numbers listed based upon your local operation. I want to see if I can change that real quick. I guess it won't let me change that. I think that might be something we change in the user input place, but let's go back and break even. So if you get into your yield, you can see that all these basic pre-populated numbers go in, and it'll tell you how much you have to yield in pounds per acre to break even with respect to your costs so that you make your money back at least. And so that goes into the respective yields going to fresh and processed production. And it kind of goes into even further the total, the break even with respect to the total cost per area. Now I want to go back and show you guys the break even in terms of the price. It shows you the different total cost of production, the different yields for each one, but then it also tells you what price per pound that must bring for each respective category here in order for you to break even at the point respective to your cost. So those are some really interesting things to kind of show you if you're meeting the baseline for your production model or not. And the other thing I was wanting to show you was the economic tools piece. It will go further into showing you how many pounds per acre you must yield with respect to the total yield. And you can see here that the green corresponds to the fresh and the yellow corresponds to the processed. And off to the right, it kind of goes into more detail of these as to what the different costs are associated with each one. But I wanted to show you this sensitivity analysis. So if you, I'm going to blow this up a little bit here for you guys. Okay. If I go over here to the expected yield of pounds per plant, and I wanted to make this, say, 120, you'll notice that this graph jumps over here in the fresh market. So it tells you how much you must yield, how much the money associated with that is to break even with each of these respective categories. And you can change how much you want the market share of each to be. So as you do this, you'll notice that my percentage pieces go up and down, reflective with the graph over here in the break even. And so that's kind of a neat tool to predict different scenarios for your local market going forward. There's also a risk analysis piece to this, and it kind of has, you can input kind of the floor and the ceiling as to what you might think the expected yield might be. So we could change that to 0.8. You could kind of go into the fresh market one for each here. These obviously are variable, but I'm just going to leave them for the sake of time because we can play with this all day. You can run this. So say if your profit target was to make, I'm going to change this to $5,000 because that just kind of is a little bit cleaner for me. And if you run these numbers, it takes a minute to populate, but it tells you the probability of you obtaining that is 9% with respect to the other inputs in your production. So you're going to have to kind of play with that to hit the number you would like. But if you wanted to go down and say, I just would like to make $1,000 per acre, just kind of going a little bit lower, you can see that this number goes up to 35%. So with respect to the different amounts that the market is kind of going with in terms of the yield, in respect to your inputs to the harvest, it kind of based the economic forecast on this. And it kind of gives you, if you really want to get into the break-even point on this with the baseline and what your comparison scenario are with respect to that. So kind of going back to the budget summary, there's a lot of different ways you can go about this, but this is a very good tool, and there's a lot of different features which you can alter here to kind of come up with a worst case and a best case scenario, and kind of figure out where the income and the costs really for your respective operation kind of fall within that. And so I'm going to open up the other side of this, which is the high tunnel production side. And now you'll notice a lot of the same pieces apply here. Plant density, expected yield. This largely follows the same, but I would like to call your attention down to the number 6 piece, where your high tunnel value that talks about how, the total area in high tunnels that you're going to try to use for production here. And if you want to, it calculates an amortization table off of this, which I'll show you guys in a second. But you can put in the total number of hours that it'll take to install this. So say if you want to change it to 180, and you go into your interest rate, you can obviously adjust to 6.5 or whatever the market is at that point. And if you wanted to amortize this over, let's say 7 years instead of 6.5, or excuse me, instead of 5, reading the wrong column there. If you hit run, this kind of pops up again, and you got to go and click. I don't know why it does that, but just calling y'all's attention to that. And so this is the high tunnel scenario. And as you notice, all of the tools above the top are kind of the same. But with respect to the high tunnel, I wanted to show you guys something that was kind of interesting. So the production area is still at 1 acre. The plant density, it kind of shows you the plants per the acre area over here to the left. But if you go into your high tunnel piece of this, it kind of populates the amount that a high tunnel piece here will cost per acre. And then it goes into, the installation of we typed 180 hours, and the price of that, it's going to cost you a little over $2,000 for the installation. But the cool thing here is that you can go down to the amortization schedule, and it will tell you, I'm going to blow this up for you guys, it will tell you a total loan amount based off of the figures entered. And we're at the 6.5 interest rate, and it talks about the loan period in years. And it provides you here, obviously this is backdated a bit, I'm just going to say 2020, so you can get the current here. But it tells you going on here if you want to enter like an extra payment. I'm not going to enter one just for the sake of simplicity. It kind of goes into on the beginning balance of any note you might take out to cover the cost of such operations. And it goes into, the total payment you're going to make, how that payment will be divided with interest, and the ending balance of your note after that. And then as you continue to go down, it shows you the cumulative interest that you've paid. And it walks you through that every year with respect to the balance that you have left until you end in the 7th year. So if you wanted to make an extra payment, you want to make 2 extra payments, you can enter that, and it kind of cuts that off a little earlier, and you'll see the numbers kind of change to reflect that. So that's something that it only has a amortization schedule with the high tunnel one, but it's based largely off these numbers here. But to change those numbers, you can do it here, but I find it a little bit easier to go back into your scenario here and change it based upon your high tunnel values at the end. And also, if you have an EQIP subsidy, I would like to point out that it does have a place for that where you can insert those numbers there, and that'll affect your amortization accordingly. But I'm going to cancel that just to keep the numbers we have here. So that's kind of an overview of everything that I would like to show you guys. I'm going to pull that back up. So that's kind of an overview, just a quick overview of the system. But there's a lot to do here, and there are a lot of ways you can functionalize this specific to your operation. And so with that, I guess I'll take any questions on this bill at the time. I'm not seeing any right now. I'll wait a couple minutes. Okay, and I will let you know that this is being recorded. So if there's more information that I went over maybe a little quickly, or you wanted to kind of re-examine for yourself, this will be available on the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative's website and the YouTube channel. So just know that going forward. And also any of the questions that may come up are also available here. You can see my slides, and you can also see the user guide here, and it's a very it'll pop up here in a second. You can see that all these things are covered, going through screenshots with different ways to walk through it, and it goes into this very much in depth. So if there are some resources to assist you if something just didn't seem to hit the mark today. So with that, I guess I would like to thank you guys for staying with me and going through all of this. And you can find this interactive budget. One question that came up is here in the PowerPoint, the interactive budget is linked. So I'll pull these up for you. You'll go down and see it's the budget download link, and it'll pop up. And there are different ones on this website. So we have one for apples, blackberry, raspberry, blueberries, but the one I'm using is the strawberry one. And you can download that, and it'll download as a zip file, so you'll have to unload that. And it works best when you save it to your computer rather than open it. So that's why you see mine saved as strawberry budget too, because I kind of went through a few iterations of this in order to make sure it was fully functional. And that's the link. So I guess do you have any other questions, Whitney? Who do we contact with questions? You can contact our office, and we can put you in touch with those that might come up, or if we go back to, I can't figure out how to get out of this now. If you go to the link that was over here, there is a way to contact these individuals that developed it. The number's down here if you have questions on this, down at the bottom of the page. And there's also, I think there's an option in the so help is one. You can kind of troubleshoot it there if you have questions. You can also go to the main menu, and there's a contact us. Well, that didn't work, but there's a way to contact them, and it's basically I would just go to the website and get the contact information from there. And obviously, we're on campus at the University of Arkansas. We can plug you into these to these individuals, and my contact information is listed on the PowerPoint that you guys had. So if you would like to contact me, I'm happy to facilitate that communication for you. Any other questions, Whitney? Alrighty, well, thank you guys. Like I said, this will be recorded and put on our site in the YouTube channel. Look forward to visiting with you guys more in the future. Thanks.